my name is Reverend Sarah Jelena Wolka, and I run an organization called Sequoia, Samanvaya. And one of the questions that we ask a lot is how do we work with the immensity of what we have inherited, particularly climate change, in order to create better futures? We see decolonization as a critical piece of that for inheritors, investors, and the wide range of people who are creating cultural and social and ecological change today. About 5 years ago, we were at Nexus and Latam Nexus in Quito. A few of you were there as well. It's a momentous occasion, and we were having these powerful global South-South conversations amongst indigenous communities. And this workshop actually is the result of that. And the partnerships you see here and the people who are here this is like a 5 years in the making, and yet at the same time, we're all very new. So thank you very much for participating with us. Our esteemed speakers, this is an interactive workshop, but we're really trying to make sure that these esteemed people who all have highly investable things, I hope everyone asks them about later. Here is Ramasubramanian. Everyone just calls him Ram. Easy. It's much easier. He's based in Chennai, India, and he works with people who live close to land and forests, as well as government institutions, private finance, and multilateral institutions, to create sustainable and regenerative livelihoods for over 25 years. Alexis Bunten, who lives in Monterey, California, is a co-lead of the Pioneers Indigeneity Program, founder of WACA, and also a partner in JumpScale. Aldo Soto, originally from Peru, is the managing director of the Amazonia Impact Ventures, which works to fund indigenous communities in the Amazon, including folks such as Juan Jintiach, who is also on his board. Excellent process there. And is the and he himself is the executive secretary of Global Alliance of Territorial Communities based in the Amazon. So just to help us get to know you a little bit better, I'd like to kind of get a quick raise of hands. Who considers themselves part of indigenous communities right now in the room? Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us. And who considers themselves indigenous investors? You are investing in organizations and you are indigenous. Yep. Okay, great. General, green, climate finance, green investors may not be with indigenous folks. Okay. Thank you. I myself am a minister, so people who don't fall into any of those categories, you can raise your hand as well. Just so everyone gets a chance to raise their hand. Welcome. So we're going to start with a quick dia. Just turn to the person next to you. What is drawing you to ask to come to this conversation, to invest in indigenous communities who are stewarding their homelands, leading climate resilience and regenerative solutions? Quick, this is 2 minutes conversation. One of the reasons inspired this for me is actually a conversation I had with Michael the other day, who said that indigenous entrepreneurs are supporting 10,000 years of history, and the values such as staying within the restraint of nature are inherent in the communities. So, what do you have? Turn to your partner and just share very quickly. Indigenous people know what they're doing. We should be supporting them. Yes. With that, I'm going to turn over to our phenomenal speakers. We actually want to start with why it's hard to do this. We're going to start with challenges. We're then going to move into solutions. And this is, in some ways, this is like what our esteemed guests see as challenges in terms of having folks investing in their communities. And we're going to, I think we're starting, did we say we're starting with Juan Carlos on this one? Yeah.
Yes. I can start. You can start.
Hello. Yep. Well, thank you very much for coming here. We're really glad to have you, and hopefully this could spark very good discussions. So we've been talking with Juan Carlos about these challenges that we can see in the Amazon basin. And what we've seen during the last years is basically that the capital is not flowing directly to communities. There are a few studies that were published a few years ago saying that from all climate finance, just 1% of that going directly to indigenous peoples and local communities. And I think that was in 2022, right? And last year, the new number is like only 2%. So it's really, the progress is very little. So that's one main thing. And what we've seen also is that most of the interventions in the Amazon are not sustainable, because basically they are projects, right? After the projects ends and the grant ends, then there is nothing left. So it's very difficult to make this intervention sustainable. The other point is that most of these projects are focused on outputs, not really outcomes. And what we really need in the Amazon is really outcomes and impact. Other challenging issue is that most of this capital flow into the Amazon, it has massive, the intermediaries actually channeling the money have massive management fees. So at the end, the real money that reach the communities is very, very little. And most of these funds and capital is focusing in 1-2 issues, and mainly conservation, for example. But there is not much investment in social enterprises in the Amazon, in livelihoods, which actually are the key for the long-term success of protecting the forest and, of course, improving the livelihoods of indigenous communities. But maybe Juan Carlos can share a bit more about his views from the ground.
Thank you, Aldo. Good morning, everyone, and also to my brothers and sisters here who are present here. I live in the community, so always when we need to connect with these challenging questions, we need to memorize and remark the values, knowledge that indigenous peoples with traditional knowledge in their territory, they are doing their best to keep protecting, fighting, and sharing what they have in the communities. The territory is the core, the territory is our house, and we give our life, not just for climate change, for diversity, it's for our surviving. So the initiatives, everything, I say this on the community, to my friends, to my brothers and sisters. All the actions that you want to do, projects, ideas, has to go in the direction of the free province for consent, context of the rights or respect. So when we open that agenda, we can do amazing things together. So connecting with that, realistically speaking, is being a challenge for entrepreneurs, for my brothers and sisters, even the women's, even the elders and the youth. We lose the hope when we go ask for the credit. Without money, with some simple money, we are doing amazing things. 80% biodiversity. You know the data, you know the information. Imagine the challenge, but if you see the challenge and the threats that we have, it's amazing. You can see in the front, illegal mining, you can see in the next corner, oil concessions, contamination in the river. It's very sad. So initiatives like impact inventory, we have a condition in the table, put the rights on the core, in the center, respect, free province for consent, and we decide to go in the conditions, equal conditions. Because in neighbor conditions, sometimes you have to monitor and measure because you need to be prepared to understand how my vision, my contribution put in numbers. These are real challenges, must be the mythification, the taboo. Indigenous people don't have to look the money. Indigenous people is going to go on the commercialization. We have to calm down about that. Because the necessity and the urgency from the ground and the principles how we present our initiatives are very valuable. It's connected with the Mother Earth, it's connected with my forest, and it's connected with my knowledge, traditional knowledge. Summarizing this, we're doing this exercise with Wiña, and there is other examples on the ground where I live. So, finalizing here, I think so that we need to connect the people, human being as indigenous people, connect the knowledge and the product, even it's tea, Wayusa tea, cacao, or products from the forest, is that sense that with our knowledge we contribute, and then we put in numbers. That is the other challenge. We need to prepare, but that's why we need your help. Thank you.
Oh, I'm third. Anyway, great to see you all here today. Some people in the back. There's a few seats up here. I sit in the back because I never know when I want to pop out, but I can't speak for them, but I don't know. I don't care if you get up and leave. So yes, we've already heard, I'm going to be very brief and broad here. We have already heard there's a major challenge in terms of access to investment and the right kinds of investment because we don't have the networks. And then investors often want to force our hand to change our solutions, to tell us how to better do that. And a lot of that is based on lack of ability to code switch between different cultures. I work with Native students, and I always tell them they have a superpower, which is their ability to know their culture and the dominant culture, double consciousness, W.E.B. Du Bois called it. And so that is underpinned by implicit bias that society creates in the form of stereotypes that we are lesser than, stereotypes of primitivity, that we don't know what we're doing, that's not our lane. And that stereotype of primitivity, it's a part of dehumanizing us, because in order to extract resources, you need to steal land or take land. In order to take land, you need to commit genocide. And in order to justify genocide, you need to dehumanize the people who are already there by thinking that they're primitive or lesser than. We hear a lot of dehumanization going on in the news right now, and it's really sad. I'm sure you can think of obvious examples. So we do know how to run businesses. We are cross-culturally very conversant, and that leads me to the third challenge, which is contracts and term sheets. Because of this race to accumulate as much capital as possible, as fast as possible, term sheets they want companies to sell if it's impact investment. And when they sell, we lose our control over things like our board being over 50% Indigenous controlled, and then our businesses are no longer ours, guided by our values. So that's just one example, 3 examples of challenges.
Yeah. So, good morning. Namaste, Vanakkam. Greeting you in my native language, where I come from in southern India, from Tamil land. Our own ancient languages spoken. Advantage of being the last one is I think they have covered several of the points I would have liked to make. So without repeating, I just want to highlight two or 3 points, 3 points basically. We are right now in the process of setting up a fund on Indigenous entrepreneurs, and as a built up on that, we had a meeting last year and with several elders in central India. And some of the questions that they posed for me were very critical. This morning, reflecting on the challenges, I was just going through my notes, and I just wanted to share 2 points that I thought were extremely relevant. One of the question was, this was asked by one of the elders, and said, can there be a way of not having to deal with the ethos of large corporations? We don't mind dealing with them, but they come with more production, more profit. That's not how we work. There's more production, more money mindset. How do we step out of that? Because we have seasons, and we have production that is based on seasons when you work with it. A larger question that is going with this is, how do you sensitize the system on governments, markets, or the culture in which we operate? How do you sensitize? This is something that Carlos had mentioned also. And one more point was the unrealistic deadlines that often contracts ensue or bring upon people, both in terms of timelines that civil society organizations that Aldo mentioned about project timelines, which are very restrictive in terms of how much time it takes for any investment to mature in a condition where you are looking at a different kind of an outcome and not necessarily something that is working with your timelines. So this entire thing of a different time schedule that is being imposed as part of a contract, as part of a negotiation, that is not respectful towards the ethos of the community. And this is something that I feel very strongly about, because time and again it is the pressure of the time, whether it is this microcredit person or the microfinance institution person knocking at your door, demanding your current produce, or whether it is negotiating the price with your large corporation with whom you have signed a contract. At each level, it is this pressure of time that infringes upon you compromising what is deep-seated, sustainable ethos within which you operate. So this is just something I would like to share as a first step. Sarah.
So I kind of want to do a quick raise of hands. We're going to move into solutions in a second, but I want to give a quick pause into some of these challenges, particularly around these extraordinarily different ethos and pressures that are coming from these different, that coming particularly from global investment, as well as philanthropy and government institutions. Does that resonate with people in the room? Just give a raise of hand that you've seen this in the places where you're working. Yeah. And are there any, we want to also curious if there's any folks who've been like actively trying to solve for that. Great. Now I'm going to do the frustrating thing of saying, let's talk about that more a little bit later. And turn back to kind of get more into some of the solutions. So let's kind of talk, I'm going to go through some of the different solutions that each of you have been finding in working and finding ways of doing something. In some ways, it's really, really hard. In some ways, this is like it sounds important and we know it's critical. And in some ways, the experience is that this is hard to do because of the pressures coming from the investors and from the global market community. So I'm going to start with Alexis.
Okay. I'm going to peel back the curtain. I took some notes here. So the main thing that I want to start with as an umbrella idea is that non-Indigenous business sectors and networks need us more than we need you. Y'all know you're doing things problematically. And I want to give a shout out to my friend Shelley Spiller, who is a Maori business professor, consultant. Do you know her? Yeah. So Shelley first introduced me to this concept called the quadruple bottom line, people, planet, profit, purpose. And the last one, purpose, just has a P. It's alliterative. But when she brought it to my attention, I learned about it from her. It's really the idea of spirituality and your values being imbued in your businesses. And one has seen in some Maori corporations and businesses that workers are happier, they're motivated to go to work, they're doing these businesses, think of the planet. And actually, I'd put profit last, but I wanted to explain purpose, so I put it last. And those kinds of practices end up being profitable because of the inherent good that they do. So we have that. One of the best solutions, the obvious solutions that all of us are going to say, is that the best way to take care of the planet and mitigate and adapt to climate change is to keep people in their communities, in their ancestral homelands. And again, because of the past we've been dispossessed from our homelands. We had internment camps in Alaska in World War II. Some people can't even go back to their islands. We have forced economies of capitalism upon us as opposed to our traditional economies that force us to move again and again. And so if we can stay home, then we know how to steward our homelands and our territories. And I want to say in 1971, we had the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act. And I've studied land claims settlement acts, which exist only in Anglo-settler colonial nations, Canada, New Zealand, the United States, and Australia to a certain extent. And every time these deals were struck to pay us for our lands, it was when there was major natural resource extraction. And people don't know that. And so in Alaska, regional corporations were created, and some people use the metaphor, how do you turn a whale hunter into a Western-style business person? We just celebrated 50 years of that, and we've been able to do it. And now, and for a while, our native corporations have been putting our traditional values and homelands first. My native corporation, Bristol Bay Native Corporation, our motto is fish first, protect the watershed for the fish, no matter what. That guides every business decision. Sea Alaska Corporation in Southeast Alaska, they've turned towards, they used to do timber for many years. We didn't know any better, but they've turned towards investing in businesses that address climate mitigation. They're doing carbon trading, which isn't really a solution, but they're working on it. And but our native corporations, I have a business, and they don't invest in us yet as individual entrepreneurs. So I think that's a really important thing to consider. I wanted to bring up the Native Conservancy's kelp farming, led by Dune Lankard out of Cordova, Alaska. Kelp is, not only does it regenerate marine ecosystem, it also serves as a carbon sink. It captures carbon capture. So I wanted to mention them, and their biggest investor is Indian Collective. So Natives investing in ourselves, but we need other people. We need to work together in this and move from that resource extraction mindset. I'm keeping an eye on that clock for you guys. So I want to talk about two projects that I'm involved with. The first one through JumpScale. Josh Nauer, my business partner, is right there. Raise your hand. You can talk to Josh about this afterwards, too. And so we have a native business incubator called Resilient Circles, and we're working closely with Spruce Root, which is a CDFI in Southeast Alaska, based out of Juneau, Alaska, and Sitka, Alaska. And this incubator it's for natives. It's trauma-informed, wellness-based, and the wellness-based in particular is that it's culturally rooted. And right now we're just about to end the pilot, and the cohort, they get together. The first thing they do is spend 2 or 3 days out on the land with cultural practitioners, coming back to who they are, building that self-esteem, because we do tend to come from a scarcity mindset. We used to have an abundance mindset, but colonization here again. And so they're almost done with the first one. And the idea here again is what I said from the very beginning, is it's a way to keep people home so they can live in their traditional communities. They can move back from the cities, wherever they've moved to, and practice traditional values, stewardship, kinship with people, with land, with water, with all the beings on it, which is really the way, if you have those values, you're not going to just want to rape the land, water, kill animals unsustainably, take resources. So the other one I want to talk about is, I'll get back to this, is Waka, which means hello in Yupik. And I can only speak for myself, but the folks in my region gave me their blessing to copyright it. Usually that's a problem, but Alaska's a little bit different. We work with DNA and stuff like that too. So so Waka is solving the problem of people needing to stay at home. I've worked in tourism for a very long time, suffice it to say, and tribal tourism. And the issue is what was mentioned earlier, which is this middleman problem. We can't network. We can't market, so other people market for us. We are dictated, at least in Southeast Alaska, by the cruise ship industry, which makes us stick to particular standards. They'll take up to a 45-50% cut of local businesses if they will work with them at all. That's a problem. And also in this industry, people can't do subsistence economies. They can't participate in ceremonies, events, funerary rites. It just erodes everything. So I created Waka as a solution to that, where local people can host visitors on their own terms. They can say yes, they can say no. It's not cookie cutter. It's just whatever people want to do. So we're just entering the pilot phase right now. But again, the idea is to stay home, circulate money throughout your communities, circulate financial resources, and give back. So the last thing I want to say, and then Josh here, I just want to give another shout out to Josh. He has a company called Reseed that's got some goals as well, and they invest in local farmers, again, for carbon capture. So you can talk to him. But I would say, well, I can't speak for Reseed, but our resilience circles are two-phasic. We're looking for philanthropic funds for starting up pilots, and then the idea is these entrepreneurs, once they get a little further along, they may want to scale, they may want investment money to scale, but we do have to look at the metrics of scale. Does scale mean doing good things in your community? A lot of Native entrepreneurs, we don't want to scale, we just want to stay local, and then others do. So the philanthropic is kind of for the startup, but for the ones that want to scale, they'll look for investment. And then for Waka, I've raised enough money to get to the pilot, but in that process, I've decided not to take impact investing because of the problem that I raised around term sheets. They have to change. They can't be symbolic. There's a lot of people right now talking about making them more, I don't know, DEIA friendly, but it's all symbolic. None of it's legally enforceable. As far as I know, things may have changed since I first started learning about this, but I'm going to be in control of it, and I'm going to pass it on to Native folks who will also be in control of it. So I got more of a story around that, but I'm done with time.
Thank you. And I just want to highlight that you said no for years, and you have still gotten funding. Mm-hmm. She has gotten investment funding, and keeping to her values. And I think that's really, it's a key story to hold up, that you don't have to say yes to terms that you don't agree with, right?
Yeah, and Waka is also working at the pace of what works for us in our communities. I'm not going to rush anybody, and I have full faith that it's going to be great.
I'm so great to hear that.
Yeah, this is a big deal.
Fantastic.
Thank you. So that clock's wrong, guys. We're actually doing okay on time. So I'm going to go to Ram next, and then we're going to end with Juan Carlos and Aldo.
Okay. So I also look at the clock.
Me too.
Yeah. So because I come from kind of a bit away from here, and some of you may not be, just to set the context where I come from in India. So when I talk about indigenous communities in Indian context, we're talking about like more than 700 plus distinct ethnic groups in one of the largest, I would say, diverse communities, which is almost like 15% of my population. I mean, we are a very populous country, of course, but even 15% is quite large, more than 60 million people around. And what happened is something very interesting in India is the last 15 years or so, title of forest dwelling communities has been made available to the communities by government. This is a major significant shift in the policy of the government. There's a Forest Rights Act that was enacted in 2008-9, but it took about a couple of years before they could implement it. But today, as we speak, we have more than 2 million titles that have been, 2.5 million titles that have been issued of about 19 million acres of land, which is like approximately about 10 to 11% of my forest. Actually, the forest dwelling communities own this land today. They have access to the land. But access to the land does not necessarily mean that they have the wherewithal within their communities to set up production, do processing, reach out to the markets. What it has meant is, along with this access to the land has come with huge amount of market pressure that has resulted during the same period of time. We will almost lost 4% of our forest. Almost like 13% of our tree cover we lost during this period. And for us, in this context, thinking about financing or green finance is for us re-establishing the stewardship, the ownership of the land, and re-establishing the ethos of that which sustained this land over a long period of time. When I say long period, we kind of talk in thousands, where I come from. We don't talk in hundreds, we talk about thousands of years is what we talk about, because every village goes back with that kind of histories. What has worked for us, that's what I'll stick to, right? So just a few points is, markets have started delivering where land rights movement stopped. Land rights movement got us access, but they could not sustain the effort in managing the land. That's where access to markets is creating us an opening for us to negotiate with the state, with the powers, political powers, and with the markets in a level playing field if we can establish it very clearly upfront with our ethos. What has worked so far? Primary aggregation, wherever there is a collectivization that has already happened. Processing and value addition closer to where we produce works very well for us. One of the movement that we have started in southern India is an entire movement of local markets, which are relationship-based marketing. We actually call it unbranding. we said we don't brand. If you are local and you are relationship-based marketing, step aside from branding it. No, don't spend money on folks who come and give you fancy designs with their laptops and then you pay half the price to them. Instead spend the money on unbranding. In fact, my farmer groups have gone several steps ahead. When we started unbranding a few years ago, they said no packaging, then zero labeling, and now they've reached to a point where they're saying de-expertising. So they every time I go to them, they get even more radical than I could initially envisage this. And currently we are at and other thing that we're trying to do is being unapologetic about demanding fair price from our own urban markets. I mean, India's got one of the fastest growing urban consumer market, and double-digit growth year on year. So we have been very unapologetic about demanding a fair price with that kind of a market space. Similarly, where we are going with a larger reach out to high-value products to global markets with clearly traceable ethical labeling and certification process that ensures that the number of honey that I'm seeing in some of the markets here tells me that we have been able to reach these markets as well. So it was nice for me to see not just chai but also some honey brands from India here, which is fantastic to see. So that is what we have been able to reach out to. I could talk about stories in each one of these. But last few things that I want to mention is the community infrastructure that we have created and the small enterprises, that community-based enterprises, today have got a success rate which is far higher than your incubation centers. Just to give an idea, I have a 70% success rate of an enterprise surviving. That is 70% of my enterprises that we create at the community level, the nano micro enterprises survive as against, if I had to benchmark them against the best tech institutions, which have 8% enterprise survival rate. So we're talking about very small enterprises financing at the community institution level. We're talking about a ticket size that is like, what, $2,000, $2,000 to $200,000. That's kind of ticket size we talk about, but multiply that by 10,000. That's a volume of what we are talking about in terms of being able to impact the communities that can sustain the forest in one of the most biodiverse parts of the world, because we are a mega biodiversity space. The last but most important part is availability of community institutions. Over the last 25, 30 years, India has built one of the largest microcredit with about 97 and 99% repayment ratio, which is globally known. Everybody knows about the story. So that is the institution that is available already for us. So we are talking about, can we leverage the existing institution with the opportunity that is opening up of the market to address a pressing demand, which is to save and steward the forest using traditional wisdom, with respect and with a process of bringing back dignity to the people who steward them traditionally. Stop there. Time.
And just to add to that, you're just creating a fund to support further investment in those enterprises that's matched for private equity to be matched by the government fund for the 70% of success rate.
Yeah.
So just to make that part clear.
Thanks, Josh.
We appreciate Josh's business acumen in this panel gathering. So I'm going to move to Aldo and then Juan Carlos and talking about some of the solutions that you are finding in the Amazon.
Yes, I mean, reflecting on those challenges that I was mentioning at the beginning, like, I mean, the funding is coming directly to projects lack sustainability, etc. We think that social enterprises actually are the key, an important piece of the solution. And unfortunately, there's not much capital reaching to social enterprises either. And in the context of the Amazon, I mean, here in North America, I think indigenous enterprises are much more developed. But in the Amazon, I think they are still very small. Most of them are very weak. They can access credit, but they do represent and aggregate hundreds and thousands of producers in the forest. So we think that that's itself, the social enterprises are part of the solutions. And they not only are a vehicle for economic empowerment of the communities or to provide sustainable livelihoods, they are also a vehicle for the protection of their lands and their forests, and they are also a vehicle to overcome inequality, to overcome exclusion, and of course racism and many years of injustice and colonialism also. So. Thinking about that, reflecting about that for many years, and also being, inspired by Juan Carlos' work, and also the work of other indigenous leaders. Also, I worked many years with the Ashaninka people in Peru. Based on that, a few years ago, with my co-founder Pajani, which is over there, we decided to create a company, an impact first investing company that can actually mobilize capital to the Amazon rainforest and can invest directly to the guardians of the forest, to indigenous enterprises and also smallholder farmers in the Amazon. So we created Amazon Impact Ventures. We started investing our own capital. We started a few months just before COVID, so we couldn't even fly to the Amazon and to monitor the loans that we were doing at that time. So it was very challenging at the beginning, but all this started also based on a relationship of trust between us and the communities we were working with. We started working with a specific community in Peru. We knew them from many years before, so there was a relationship based on trust there. And since then, we've been deploying loans, concessional loans, to many communities in Ecuador, in Peru, and in Colombia, supporting their own businesses. They produce cacao, they produce biodiversity products like Brazil nuts, like acai, like guayusa. Juan Carlos is going to tell more about guayusa a bit later. Ungurawi, many products coming from the forest. Of course, also coffee, some of them, and other commodities. But part of also what we want to do is to try to invest more in these products that are coming directly from the forest, and that you need the forest standing in order to produce and to harvest. So that's for us like a great strategy to protect the forest, to improve livelihoods. And I think, so far we've been working with many cooperatives and producer associations in these countries. We see there's still, it's very challenging for us to raise capital, to mobilize it to these regions. But of course, there are also challenges on the ground. And that's why I think part of the solution is also the approach. It's not only finance, it's also non-financial support. It's also building the capacities on the ground, and provide the right type of capital also. So when we were discussing, I think the previous days about the type of capital that is needed, I think it's key that this capital is patient, of course, and that is risk tolerant, that is flexible, concessional also, and that it can have integrated approach, right? An integrated capital approach. So it's not only finance that is needed, it's also technical assistance, grants next to the loans, and one key also aspect that I'm sure Juan Carlos is going to mention is that is how the indigenous peoples are also involved in the discussion about impact investing. They can also they can participate in events like this, right? It's the first time that Juan Carlos is here, so I'm sure he has a lot to comment there. So yeah, I'll leave it there for him to comment.
So how much minutes I have? I am looking there. She said that it's
About 5.
5 minutes.
We're going
I
to start
will
the
try to
Q&A.
use 3 minutes.
If you have not yet written something on your paper, your little paper you got for questions, please do so now, and we'll be collecting it as Juan Carlos speaks. And I also just want to underline the patient capital phrase that Aldo just said. Is a really beautiful phrase of thinking about what's an important ethos in this space. And just to highlight the extent to which Aldo is saying he's visiting the communities himself, and the relationship is in person, and it's holistic. It's not just how are you doing, how's your business doing? It's a holistic relationship, and I have really appreciated the way in which the two of you model deep listening with each other in the time that I've known you. So just turning to Juan Carlos.
Thank you. I completely fully agree with my brothers and sisters here who are taking the floor behind me. Something that I would like to call here is the transparency that I want to try to summarize is we ask in solidarity and we don't leave anyone on behalf of us. Between us, we all work in the collective way. Indigenous people, brothers and sisters, that there are some groups that have opportunity to have directly opportunities in different arenas, from the ground to the international arena. So what I mentioned is remarkable to mention that how in this long walk, our elders, brothers and sisters, and the territory that we live, we have some principles and collective that we are working very hard in the context of human rights, indigenous people rights, local communities, and now there's a group in Colombia, Afro-descendants groups. So they are speaking with us and solidarity how we can move from Cali to next challenges, and we are open then and we coordinate with them. Second one, I think so that we need to reflect that there is millions of dollars that you know, millions of dollars like a rivers, burburs there. So that's why we create a Shandia initiative. I don't have too much time to explain that, but Shandia convene in a platform to analyze, to identify, to monitor all these promises, the politics, the corps that are involved between them. We are not there. We know that. We read that. Or you know, or you tell us. So that is why with this challenge we create this platform in solidarity with other indigenous LEDs that are implementing and working in the world. Second one, without my territory, I am nothing. My home. I am nothing. I don't have my plans or life. That's my agenda. That my elders, there have been discussions for many days in each cosmovision, in each language, in each territory. Yeah? And then you have your plans of life, and then you create the other initiative, the next step. How you determine your territory. Some people call Causa Sacha, my people are Shuar Puhustin Tarimiat. That connects me with my life, with territory, my core, my indigenous vision. Wait a minute, money, where is the money? Right? So I'm going to be there. But following these principles in collective, in the tropical areas, in 24 countries, in the rainforest, we're talking with some other indigenous groups how we can harmonize and bring our consents, principles, not just complain. Talk to us. Work with us. We are the solutions. Many of you will be here, my brothers and sisters. We have the solution on the ground. So that connects me that if we don't secure our land or territory or plans or modern lives, that we need to transform that in this taboo and mythification, the numbers, the how much, what's my cost to giving the life with my forest? What is the cost? What's the metrics about that? I mean, you can't measure a culture. You cannot measure my spirituality concept. No. We have to make a differentiation to play with that, because if you connect with traditional knowledge, it's another challenge. So, governance, solidarity, indigenous walking during the many years, bringing from concerns from the ground, we need to do in actions. That's why we open these road and table discussions. I am very hard working and talking with my own government, creating the round table discussion when we were talking about RED about many years. And I was pushing to sit down together in equal condition with respect, because I have my collective rights, not just speaking, in the Constitution, and I have my mother rights, and the natural rights. Yeah. So how we are going to play this game together? So summarizing principles that we don't need to forget. Territory for us is our life. We are one with the Mother Earth, connected with the products. So we need to help. Some people want to connect us with other groups who are developed, and with a lot of respect. They're coming to talk about carbon markets, oil mining, and et cetera, et cetera. But my suggestions and my final petition here is how we working together. You need to work with us, not with me. We have to make this the institutionality. We have organizations. We have plans of life, and we can develop this, and we have partners. But honestly, we have to go and work a lot about the trust each other. Many, many years we learned the lesson how we use it. And this is unfair. We are talking about justice. We're talking about transparent. And that's where we are going to work from here for that. And that is my last call. Action, urgent, and transparent, working together like a brother and sister. We don't have time. Thank you.
There's a lot of capacity development that everyone's talking about, and that includes with each other, right? They're each building each other's. Juan Carlos is building Aldo's capacity, right, to be able to work with his community. It's not a one-way street. And, Alexis's work is helping to build the capacity of other Indigenous entrepreneurs, right? There's a lot of there's a mutuality in capacity building, and it's a whole picture. It's not just the narrow thing. So there's two different types of questions that come in. And one of them sort of coming from the side of Indigenous founders, and the other coming from the side of more global investors who may not identify as Indigenous. You can start with the advice for Indigenous founders seeking capital from larger institutions. What are mantras for motivation and best resources? I'm wondering if any of you have suggestions.
I can do that.
Yeah.
So I got the idea for Waka a really long time ago. And I didn't think, again, I talked about a scarcity mindset, and I was like, I'm going to have access to money. I don't know enough people or any people in Silicon Valley, because it is a tech solution. And then one day I was hanging out with my girlfriend who recently gave up her practice as a business lawyer. And she said, let's just have lunch a couple times. You need to do this. So literally we had lunch, and she spelled it all out for me and told me what I needed to do. And I did it. And then from there, I just kept learning and networking and meeting people. But I know what it feels like to feel like you have no access to money or resources, or maybe you get access to it and people don't believe in you. There are, I don't know what you call them. There are investment groups that are really trying to prioritize investing in Black-owned startups, and more so recently Native-owned startups. And I've seen them looking for Native in tech, but they don't have anyone to invest in, according to their stipulations. So they need to work on building capacity, because, like I said, they need us more than we need them. It could be a lot of fancy talk, but it's not really happening. It's a little bit depressing. Oftentimes we just end up bootstrapping our own work, but thankfully there are organizations like Raven Capital or NDN who are investing in our own people, but it's not enough. Investors need to throw their assumptions and implicit biases to the side.
And then the other questions are kind of related to each other, which is how can the impact investing community engage Indigenous communities more into discussions? I'm assuming that's to increase the impact investors' capacity, and to find, it's related to the question, how can I invest today in Indigenous projects or communities? Obviously, everyone here has investable solutions. So I encourage, if you are looking for Indigenous projects to invest in, every single person has something tangible. And then there's a number of people in the room as well who also have very tangible current places to invest. But just like, what are some general, in addition to speaking to you directly about your projects, how can the impact investing community engage more to actually solve some of these problems that for really quite a number of years, the impact investment community has not been able to effectively reach these communities, despite having so-called similar values?
May I help? There is something that I always like to reflect with the elders, the leaders, and who belongs to the territory, and they're elected between us, and consensus that the values, how we as a young generation or kids are coming, we never forget who we are, and make memorize, and the huge work and thinking and connections with all cosmovision itself as each indigenous groups in the rainforest. And that is the particular, that's something that makes it sensitive when we go in the ceremonies. We talk with these values, but some people that it's difficult to interpret the interpretation, how much is the value for that product inside, or what that means, that product for me as a human being connected with the Mother Earth. Talking to that value is going to give me life. So this we need to do this exercise. We are reflecting with permissions, with the all cosmovisions, with different culture has their own way to connect with, talk to the forest, talk to the water. I give my life with the water because I have seen this data that many kids are going to drink water from the river are with metals, with mercury, and we know who are doing this, right? What we are doing this, but that's what we need to reflect that very deeply, because the values that you are here and you are the messengers, you are this light connection you have experienced. That's why we open trust. But some people that we trust, they fail us. I mean, this is very hard. But in context of money, people can change. You can be seen, leaders. They get some leader power, they change themselves. That's give power to that guy. I mean, if he's elected, has a power, it transforms. I mean, this is very hard, that we don't have to disconnect with values, your own values for the elders, with your culture. Even that you are billionaire or you want a lot of money, keep the values for the life. Keep the values for the Mother Earth. So I want to finalize to say this, because I want to memorize in these people, there's indigenous groups, people, they're still living free, no contact in this reality. And we are here speaking on behalf of them, and we are asking you also to try to connect or transform this money or this euro or dollar. Don't change your mind and change your value, because we don't want to build buildings inside and the rainforest, or transform. We want to give you a proud of what we have and how we want to maintain all a territory and to be living in peace. No criminalization, because there are killings minute by minute for many transitional minerals, wherever, or oil and contaminated. This is our blood is going for what is the cost. So you have experience, you are here, and thank you so much for the invitation. And my colleagues here, we know for many years, 20 years, we argued so much with him. No, it's because we love each other, but that's part of the principle that you need to trust. Not just for my picture, not just for the book, indigenous people there, Juanca or other leaders. No, it's not that. We have to go in the value as a human being. So that's my message for you in this context about monetary concepts, business, we can do this together. Thank you.
Can I add one? You want me to add something?
Sure. Yeah. Go
Oh,
ahead.
okay. Go.
Just to maybe to add something, I mean, from the perspective of impact investors, I think it's very important for impact investors to really understand the complexity of what's happening on the ground in Juan's territory, and is very representative from what's going on in the Amazon in general. So that's really key, and that's also important that investors have humility, right? To understand their position in life. And also, I think listening is very important. I think Sarah mentioned that. And learning. I mean, this is a process where you learn a lot. I'm learning all the time with Juan Carlos. When I visit a community, when I talk with a woman, with an elder, I mean, I've been working in the Amazon for many years. I'm Peruvian. I mean, I know my country, etc. But I learn every day. So I think that's quite important for impact investors. And as Juan Carlos mentioned, I mean, there's no time. And I mean, it's more than 70% of the Amazon has been already lost by deforestation. If we reach to 25%, the whole ecosystem is going to change. And it's going to be a savanna type ecosystem. So we're going to lose biodiversity, to lose carbon. It's going to be really a global catastrophe. So we don't have time. We need impact investors to really commit and to mobilize capital to this type of organizations and opportunities on the ground. Yeah.
So just to illustrate what Carlos said, maybe what Aldo said just now, I just want to give one instance, because when Carlos was talking about it, I just thought of this instance of talking to a young seed saver from the community. And he mentioned it during one of the conversations this morning. I was thinking about, just Carlos said it kind of triggered in my mind. It said, when people bring hybrid seeds into our soil, in the name of improving productivity, they remove us from the seasonality. I asked him to explain. He said, look, I maintain like 5-6 types of seeds with me of paddy. If the rainfall is delayed this season, I plant a different variety. If this season there is a different weather condition, I plant a different seed. I maintain all of this diversity with me. But the moment you bring hybrids and say high productivity, you deprive me of being connected with my seasonality. Right? You say production is important, yield is important. And the moment I am removed from my seasons, responding to my season, you're removing me. One of my connections with my soil and my air and my water is being kind of removed there. When you remove that one by one, that's what happens when new things come in. People are thinking in terms of, okay, efficient production, better productivity, bring hybrid seeds. And he said, with that, with each of these interventions that come in, you are removing me one step away from my soil. The more you remove me from my soil, the less I'm going to be listening to you. I just wanted to stop with that because it is a story that illustrates what you said about having the humility to listen. Because people are with good intentions, they say increase productivity, be more efficient. But then that's not the case. So.
Wow. Are we going to be more efficient at destroying the planet and our connection to it? We're coming to the end of our time. We're actually doing really well on time. I'm very proud of everyone, including the audience. I just want to kind of check in with Alexis first, and then like see if anyone else has any final remarks as we're kind of closing out today.
Well, it's not really a wrap up. I was just thinking about Ram and I were talking before this session. I'm guessing you'll agree. One of the things that we're doing, working with Indigenous entrepreneurs, small businesses, as opposed to these large corporations, is you've heard us talk about taking out the middle persons who often take a very large cut. I mean, even with artists, galleries keystone and will take 50% of the profits. So eliminating the middle people, being middle people who listen and support us and what we were talking about, supporting the marketing. Indigenous peoples do what we do best. We don't need to be the best at everything. We can ally things that other people are really good at. I think we've heard a lot about building alliances, breaking down this us-them mentality for the healing and well-being of everybody. And then we were also talking about, as you know, Indigenous peoples are probably the most exploited peoples in the world. And we get the least funding, whether it's philanthropic or investment funding, working with the communities to raise our prices, know that we're worth it because people will pay for it, and then eliminating those huge cuts that the middle persons take.
Yeah, maybe to add to that, I think we need to be better, right? I mean, middlemen have been a problem for centuries in the Amazon, actually, and I think we need to come with innovations and better solutions. In our case, for example, our fund, I think it's different from others. We don't charge a management fee. I mean, we just make our revenues are based on the delta between the cost of our capital and what we lend, the interest rate we lend. So I guess we need to try to find solutions which are more fairer to everyone, I mean, there are many opportunities to invest in the Amazon. It's not just what we're doing, what Juan Carlos is doing. We see that in many countries, in Brazil, of course, in many countries in the Amazon. So I think it's more, we just need to bring investors and try to understand what's going on and the urgency of really moving capital now.
I completely fully agree with my sister and my brother here and all were mentioning. I think so that is very important for us. It really was mentioned very briefly. This collective consensus, we have our protocols, indigenous protocol consultations between us. In that principle, I think so the initiatives that's going to be urgent has to be effective because we don't have, in some areas, we don't have time to wait in some funds for criminalization, the urgent mobilizations, and et cetera, that you know. But it's always important to reflect how much you're studying, researching, to canalize this fund. Sometimes it's been very bureaucratic. I don't want to be aggressive or rude or indiplomatic with people who is giving us some help and collaboration, intermediaries, but we need to change this narrative together. What is going to be more flexible? And I think so. My call is that to be here is that open for other people, the generations, that we never has the block to anyone. So we work collective. It's for everyone. We have something to eat in the house. We bring the other family there. But still, yesterday I was talking with some brothers here that I drink traditionally the water from the river. I think so. Also, I have metals in my blood. So I've been visiting families how they're drinking, make the traditional drink from the river. The river is contaminated with metals. But somebody was telling me, I think so we need to do a research and technology, how we canalize this fund. We have the institutionality, we have your friends here. We can do this together. We cannot do this alone.